Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by Momma Angler, Kisha Atkin. Kisha shares her angling passion. We talk family, fly fishing, and fly tying, and we take a deep dive into what makes our fly fishing community such a special place. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And 2 thank yous. I want to thank the Outdoor Writers Association of America for recognizing an episode of The Articulate Fly, part 1 of our interview with imperfect Texan Buddha Steve Ramirez, in this year's Excellence in Craft Awards in the Fishing Radio Podcast category. I am truly honored and humbled to be in the company of the other award winners. A special thank you to Steve Ramirez for trusting me to share his story and taking time away from his busy writing and travel schedule to sprinkle a little of his mojo on me. And a special thanks to my advertisers. Thank you, Norvice, for being there from the beginning, my guests for their time and their trust, and all of my industry friends for all of their favors, big and small. All of you have helped me realize my vision for creating content and serving our community. And we recently celebrated our 5-year anniversary. We couldn't have done it without the support of the Articulate Fly community. In 5 years, we've released over 725 interviews and fishing reports, and none of it would have been possible without our listeners, guests, advertisers, and friends. Thank you all. Your support means more than you will ever know. Now, on to the interview. Well, Kisha, welcome to the Articulate Fly.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, we've been trying to kind of make this happen for a while. And, we have a tradition on the Articulate Fly. We like to ask all of our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Earliest fishing memory, that has to be when I was about 8 or 9, somewhere in that time frame. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and boy, it's hot down there. I was a tomboy to the max. I hung out with the boys, didn't hang out with any of the girls, did all the guy stuff. But we had this really small family cabin in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is about 2.5 hours from where we lived in Phoenix. And it was 7,000 feet or higher elevation. And we went up there all the time to get away from the heat. And so outside of Flagstaff, there's this little town called Mormon Lake, and that's where our cabin was. And in the heart of this town, I think there's 50 people that live in the town year round. It's teeny, weeny, tiny. But there's this very humble gas station right in the heart of this little village. And there's a pond there. And they would stock this pond with just the itty-bittiest, teeny little trout. And every time we'd go up there, that's where you'd find me. There was no question, where's Kisha? She's at the pond with her little rod. And that's where I just spent hours and hours just glued to my bobber, just waiting with anticipation for that thing to go underwater. And I'd catch up a few trout and my grandparents, their cabin was just right across the other side of the pond. And so I'd run over there at the end of the day, and my grandma would grill my fish, on the porch, and we'd hang out. And there was other places to fish around Flagstaff. There's a lot of trout, but definitely my earliest memories are centered right there at that teeny weeny little pond. Just very simple, but very, very special.
Yeah, very, very neat. And, to say that fly fishing is a family affair with the Atkins is an understatement. So can you tell us a little bit about how the Atkin family broke into fly fishing?
Yeah, you bet. Definitely an understatement. We're pretty obsessed. I can readily own that and admit that. So fast forward several decades, from Mormon Lake, Arizona, and my husband and I, we're married and we have 2 wildly crazy, awesome boys, and we're living in Texas at this time. And my kids are 15 and 12 now, but when they were toddlers, they were obsessed with bugs. And even more than we are obsessed with fly fishing. It was insane. I remember bringing Wes home from the hospital, and I would catch James. James is older. He'd be in the backyard collecting ladybugs and grasshoppers, and he'd smuggle them in the house to try to give to his baby brother. Just obsessed with bugs. And we taught him how to fish, chasing bass in Texas. They are a riot. But probably from the age of 3, I mean, they could cast the spinning rod like a boss. I mean, they were good and they loved it. But I think that world of bass fishing and the passion for bugs, I mean, they were just destined to collide at some point. They were going to come together. And that happened in late 2020. We lost our home in Hurricane Harvey, which is kind of a bummer. But we ended up moving into an RV full time, trying to just save money and get back on our feet. And we soon found ourselves spending a lot of time together in a very small space. And so we needed to just find ways to get outside and just find some balance in our lives. And Chris and I, my husband, Chris, we decided, man, we need to teach our kids how to fish for trout. And where can we go and do that? And so we started doing some research, and we learned that trout fishing in Texas is very limited. Very limited. But there is one river here called the Guadalupe River. It's about 3 hours away, and you can find trout there. They stock it, from about November to, the springtime, February, March-ish. And our Trout Unlimited chapter takes care of that for us. But a lot of the spots on that river were fly fish only. And so we're like, man, if we're going to get out and do this, we got to learn how to fly fish. And so by golly, we did. All 4 of us, we jumped in all the way. We bought waders and boots and very inexpensive rods. And we just said, I know we're going to love this. And we weren't wrong. I won't say it's not the purest form of fly fishing, here in Texas. It is a very unique thing to fish the Guadalupe River in Texas. And anybody who's been out here and fished the Guad, you know what I'm talking about. But man, it didn't take us long to figure out we came across something really, really special and something that really meant a lot to us. And we've pretty much been fly fishing ever since then. I mean, we just have not stopped. I mean, it was lights out, game over. Started connecting with our fly shop and just off to the races. I mean, couldn't stop us if you wanted to, I don't think, at this point.
Yeah, and also, too, I would imagine, it's probably one of those COVID silver linings, too, right? Because you had a chance to, get out and travel around and move around a little bit, too.
Right, yeah. I mean, couple COVID on top of the fact of being inside of an RV with your 4 kids, it's maybe 400 square feet, and then you're, it's not just like after school home, you're home all the time. So it was a definite silver lining. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And so is trout the species of choice, or do you have something else that's like your number one preference to chase on the fly?
You know what? We're so easy to please. We're out here in Texas, and so there are a lot of really exciting species to chase in Texas, and we definitely don't limit ourselves. I mean, you have Rio Grande cichlids, which are pretty fun and native here in the hill country area. You've got bass, panfish, catfish, carp. But we definitely, I personally love the mountains, me, myself. I love the mountains and I love river fishing. So if you can couple that with a fly rod, I mean, I'm done. I don't need much else. I enjoy all of it. Chris probably loves chasing cutthroat in like the higher lakes more than if he got to choose, but like I said, we're not real picky. My littlest Wes, he will ooh and ah over, a 2-inch panfish. I mean, he marvels at them just as he would at his 22-inch, brown trout. I mean, we just truly love it all. So.
Yeah, very, very neat. And, can you share with us some of the folks that have mentored you and your family on your fly fishing journey and kind of some of the things they've taught you?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. That is definitely one of the aspects of fly fishing that I have come to love and appreciate so, so much is the mentoring and the giving and the, just the people and the friends that you end up just filling your life with. The willingness to help and share and encourage is just, it's pretty incredible. It's like a pay it forward type of industry, and I love that. So I would have to say, right after our first couple of trips down to the Guadalupe River, my kids started begging for a tying vise, which, I mean, shocker. That's not a hard jump there, but all they wanted for Christmas that year was a vise. And so Santa, he obliged. He brought them a scientific angler tying kit and a book by Pat Dorsey. And so, they started tying, and about February, so give them about 8 weeks of tying experience, we heard about fly fishing show out here in Texas that was going down, and I thought, oh my gosh, we got to go. And Pat Dorsey's supposed to be there. We've just got to go. And so we surprised the kids with tickets, and we went out there, and when we didn't hardly get in the doors, and my kids came up to a table of tires, and I'm not exaggerating when I say they must have spent, the better part of the next 3.5 hours at this one table talking to these two gentlemen that were tires. It was Phil Iwane and Steve Maldonado. They are signature designers and tires with Uncle Feather Merchants, and they were out from Colorado and Texas, and they took so much time to talk to us, and especially to my kids. And I would say that was like the hook set right there on their journey. Was, if it wasn't game over already, I mean, they didn't stand a chance. I mean, Steve Maldonado was a competitive bass fisherman, so they started drilling him with all kinds of questions about what kind of flies do I need, and how do I fish them, and where do I go to get this kind of stuff, and what kind of hook is it? I mean, you can't even imagine the questions that they just drilled these two individuals with. And I mean, they were just the nicest guys. And from there, just this friendship blossomed. We left there. We didn't even find Pat. We couldn't get through to find Pat that day. But we spent so much time with Phil and Steve, and they ended up inviting us, if you're ever in Colorado, come up and fish with us. And we did. A few months later, we came up to Colorado, and Phil came out to the river and showed us how to rig, and here's how you cast this, and here's how you land these. And he spent all day with us, all four of us, just going around and taking care of us, and just always following up. I mean, just the salt of the earth men. So those were probably our earliest mentors that really got things going. I mean, I can't imagine where we'd be without the knowledge that they gave us right there at the beginning. But after meeting Phil and Steve, then I started wanting to get into tying. So it didn't take long before, I was hunting down YouTube videos, and I came across Charlie Craven's videos, and I probably watched every single one of them at least once the first run through. And I was calling him up before you know it, asking him all kinds of questions. And he was so kind to put up with me and everything that I remember one particular time saying, okay, Charlie, I'm looking at this pattern. I don't know what a furnace feather is. You're saying I need a furnace feather. What is that? I mean, just the most basic questions, and so bless that man for all that he's done to help me getting into tying. He definitely has earned some good karma there. Landon Mayer, oh my gosh. Landon has been a godsend for my son, James. He has understatedly saved him in so many ways. James fell in love with the mini leech. That was one of the first flies, a confidence fly for James. And we bumped into Landon at the Denver Fly Fishing Show, and James was just so excited to meet him, and it did not disappoint. I mean, so much energy, so much encouragement, so much enthusiasm, and Landon really kind of took James under his wing and gave him a lot of coaching, a lot of advice, a lot of tips on rigging, and that only led to even more success on the water and an even greater obsession with the mini leech. We did eventually meet Pat Dorsey, and we bumped into him out here at Trout Fest. And I know my son Wes, the youngest, went up to him and had a question with him about a fly that he ties in his book called The Bread Crust. And so Pat, of course, answers his questions and talks to him. Well, the next week there was another event in Texas that Pat was also attending. And when we went up and shook hands with Pat, he says, Wes, come here, I've got something for you. And I mean, we're talking about Pat Dorsey. He's the best of the best. I mean, you would never expect him to be so kind and such a gentleman. As soon as you meet him, it's like you're instant friends. And he takes Wes and he says, here's a hen neck. Here's all the material that you need to tie the bread crust. Now let's do it together. I'm going to show you how I trim this feather. I'm going to show you how I prepare this and prepare that. And they sat down together and tied the bread crust just right then and there on the spot, like he was anticipating him to come. I mean, it was just so generous and so kind. It's just amazing to me how many people, it's just 100 moments like that of people just taking the time to teach us, and the generosity. Chris Johnson down in Living Waters Fly Fishing in Round Rock, Texas, our local fly shop. I can't even begin to describe how much he's helped us in our fishing game. I mean, just all these like micro mentoring experiences that have just catapulted us into so much success. I mean, I'm so, so grateful for everybody. And there's tons. It's just tons of experiences like that have shaped us and really just solidified our foundation in this amazing, amazing industry.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. I mean, I really truly believe it that, I tell people all the time, I think the fly fishing community is one of the most generous communities there is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wanted to learn how to Euronymp, and I'm messaging Lance Egan, busy Lance Egan, who's running Fly Fish Food on Fly Fish Team USA. Same with Devin. Hey, what kind of material was that for that leader? And they're answering me and getting back to me. And here's the link, and here's that. It's incredible. I mean, Craig Matthews, one of the first flies I ever tied, the sparkle done. And he's like, send me some pictures. Show me what you're doing. Okay, tie a few more and send me more pictures. Try this, try that. I mean, it's incredible what a beautiful, beautiful community this really is. It's the cheering and the encouragement. And in today's world, I mean, that's everything. It's so wonderful.
Yeah. Do you know Phil and Steve's nicknames?
I probably know more nicknames than I probably should for those two. I've fun around them enough. I'd love to know your nicknames for them. I could tell you.
They're Rat, Stink, and Skeeter.
Rat, where did that come from?
Oh, that's just something we've been kicking around an idea about doing a podcast series, and it'd be the adventures of Rat, Stink, and Skeeter on the Front Range.
Rat, Stink, and Skeeter. Well, I tell you what, I'm not surprised that I could think of 100 things to call them, and you hang around them long enough, they're pretty phenomenal people. I mean, my kids call them Uncle Steve and Uncle Phil. I mean, they're so wonderful, so wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and the book seats you mentioned too. Like I think Pat's tailwater book I bought to tie for the tailwaters on the South Holston right here, and the patterns are great. And then I think Charlie's tying books are phenomenal.
Oh, they are. That's where we've derived so much knowledge. I mean, my kids, their first flies were Pat Dorsey's book, and that's kind of how we learned is like, hey, just start tying your way through the book. Charlie Craven's Basic Fly Tying. I mean, it is insane how much incredible and helpful knowledge is in those books. I mean, they are phenomenal. I love them. They're pretty well worn out. I've had to tape Pat's book. I've had to tape together a couple of times in a few different places because it's just been flipped through so often.
Yeah, I think the great thing about Charlie's book, right, is that those first like 4 or 5 chapters where he really kind of talks about skills. Mm-hmm. That I think it's a very different approach. Like most books, they try to teach you by going by pattern, right? And he's like, here's what you need to know how to do, and now we're going to go apply.
Yes,
and it's
techniques.
Yeah,
yes,
it's super helpful.
I love that. I do too. And it was perfect for a beginner like me. I mean, of course, a lot of them go through the tools, and he went through tools, but then it was like, you need to know how to do this to tie flies like this. So let's learn how to do this, and we're going to tie that. And then as you move through the book, you build on all those skills. It's like, now that you know how to do this, now we can add this to the pattern, and it's awesome. It really was tie your way through the book. I loved it.
Yeah. And the neat thing too, I always tell people that you'll save multiples of what the book costs just in not buying the wrong stuff to tie with, because he goes into a ton of detail about vices, tools, and everything.
Yeah, what you need, what you don't need, how to select materials, what you're looking for. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think we're establishing that your family is eaten up with fly fishing, and even though you're relatively, 3 years into your adventure, how many days have you guys spent on the water so far this year?
I would say it's safe to say we spend between 150 to 200 days on the water during the year. Randomly. It may not be all day, but we touch water at least that number of days. It's just part of who we are. I mean, it's almost like, my kids, even this week, this just been a long week for them. And we're going, oh my gosh, they've only been to the little creek behind our house twice this week. That's just not enough time for them to be outside on the water. So yeah, it's definitely an understatement about being eaten up with it. It's literally part of what makes us happy. It fills our cup.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, to really underscore the point, I think when you told me how many miles you'd put on the minivan this year, it kind of blew my mind. You want to share that with our listeners?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I would say in a tying season, between, the start of January, to the end of March, kind of when right before spring happens, I would say last year we did about 9,000 miles in a tying season. Just going to fly fishing shows, different tying events, across the country, just tying. And then over the summer, this past summer, for example, we put over 17,000 miles, in the next 3 months of the year. So our passion, our love just knows no bounds. I mean, it's what we love to do. And so we go and we do it. I'm so grateful to have found something that we all love. I mean, I'm never having to, twist anybody's arm. They're literally chomping at the bit, all four of us, filled to the brim with excitement to hit the road and to find a new river, chase a new fish, try different flies, or these are hatching, or now it's streamer season, or it's salmon flies. I mean, it was an incredible summer, but we definitely put the miles in. Our poor van, we go through a lot of oil changes and a lot of tires, but boy, we've been to some beautiful places and we've had so much fun. Just the experience, different parts of the country. You can't put a price tag on that. We travel well and we have fun doing it. So I don't see us slowing down anytime soon. It's just what we love. It's easy, it's fun, it's exciting. So
yeah. And so, what's been your favorite fishing destination of 2023?
Oh man, hands down. I mean, not even a contest, was Yellowstone National Park. That we did that over the summer. People talk about it. They seem to go on and on talking about it, how wild it is, how beautiful it is. Well, they're right. And now I get it. We figured that out this summer. The fishing was tough, but it was so rewarding and so unforgettable. We can't wait to go back. The cutthroat were incredible. What a place. We planned on staying there 10 days. We're like, we're going to go to the park. We're going to make reservations, on this campground. We're going to stay for 10 days. It's going to be awesome. We can't wait. And we got there. And when the 10th day came and we were starting to pack up our camp, I mean, we couldn't leave. We just could not bring ourselves to leave. And we're like, we've got to stay longer. We can't be done with this chapter of summer yet. And so we ended up staying an additional 7 days on top of that, just piecing together, finding a campsite here, sneaking in a little spot over here, just kind of all around the park, anywhere we could get a spot. And I'm so glad we did. I'm so glad we did. The salmon flies were coming off. You have, other stoneflies, golden stones. I mean, just big bugs. I mean, how can you beat 20-inch plus cutthroats on size 4 and 6 dry flies? I mean, it was just insane. It was so phenomenal. I also got to try a little bit of stillwater fishing. I got a little taste of that this summer. Just no contest, Yellowstone Park. It was the best.
Yeah, it's a neat place. I usually go in the fall, usually about this time of year. Sometime if you go back, my favorite river to fish in the entire park is the Firehole. Yeah, and you can't fish it in the summer because it's too hot. But
exactly.
But when it cools off and it's snowing and the bison are coming together and you're sitting there fishing soft tackles for waiting for the hatch, and then the miller caddis come off and the blue-winged olives. It's a pretty amazing place. And then you've got like all the boiling water and the steam and the sulfur. It's a super cool place to kind of watch everything kind of go to sleep for the winter.
And I would love to go back in the fall. I'm sure we will. Unfortunately, we can't this year, but we didn't get to fish, the Madison or the Firehole or any of that because, as you stated, it was too hot. The fish had already moved out. So we spent a lot of our time in other sections of the park. And so I thought that in itself was so exciting, thinking that, even though we've been to Yellowstone, I mean, there's so much that we haven't even tapped yet. After 17 days, I mean, we haven't even gotten to some of what you might consider the best. So we can't wait to go back. It is a magical place. It really is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I can remember the first time driving into the park in Gardner, and you drive a little bit in and you see that massive waterfall. And you just are like, maybe every now and again we get something right.
Oh man, it's hard to describe. Like I said, I've heard people go on and on about the park, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of beauty out there. I get it, but it really, you have to be there. You kind of have to be there to understand it. And that, I know exactly what you're talking about, that waterfall coming in. It's breathtaking. It really is. You got to stop and just take it in. I mean, I couldn't imagine a more special place than that. It makes us want to move closer to make more trips possible. So it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny, when you and I were talking, kind of doing the kind of game plan for the interview, we were talking that we're kind of similarly wired about, trading luxuries for more days on the water. And,
Oh yeah.
I know you have some secrets that you shared with me, and I was wondering if you'd share them with our listeners, for the folks that are kind of like us, that'll do anything they can to kind of get more days out there.
Yeah, you bet. Boy, we take it pretty seriously, don't we? I would say the first thing that we do, and I know this isn't possible for everybody, but we travel at night. I know folks say that we're crazy for doing that, but my kids sure do have it made. But like, say for example, we want to head to Colorado for the weekend and fish. We will. And we do this oftentimes. My kids will get out of school on Friday and we'll leave, we'll pack up the van and leave. And Chris and I will drive through the night. We'll trade off. And my kids will literally wake up on the South Platte. I mean, and so that driving through the night, it allows us then to be on the water, from sun up all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And then we'll drive home through the night Sunday night and pull into town just in time to get my kids showered and changed into school by 8 a.m. I mean, it's insane, but that it maximizes our time, and we just want as much time as we can get. I mean, definitely sleep is a luxury, but I'm willing to sacrifice a lot of it when we travel. Another thing that we do, we are kind of crazy. We bought a home freeze dryer. Not like a dehydrator, but an actual like freeze dryer. And we prepare meals and freeze dry them so that we can camp remotely and not have to be limited by, hungry kiddos or, a grumbly tummy when you're on the water. So we bring all of our food with us, and they're yummy. They're delicious. It's the meals that we make, but we invested in that home freeze dryer just to make more meals so that we can be on the water. I mean, imagine, it's about dinner time. You pull off the water a little bit, you boil a little bit of water, and you prepare your meal and you fill everybody up, and 30 minutes later, you're right back to fishing. You get those last few hours of light that can sometimes be the best fishing. And there's no limits. So we love it. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, traveling snacks, and you name it, we bring it with us everywhere. Another thing we do is we camp a lot. So we just want to be as close to the water as we can. Oftentimes in the winter, that might not always be an option, but based on the temperatures, we've got really, really warm sleeping bags. And say for example, we were at Clean the Dream this past August. And, we had several offers from friends to stay at their house, which was so generous, and we're so grateful. I mean, sometimes we do. We love our buddies and our friends. But when we consider the travel time to and from each other's house, I'm like, man, that's about 3.5 hours of fishing that I could have if I just camp right here instead. And so we oftentimes, opt for that. And we did at Clean the Dream this year. We thought, man, well, the tricos are coming off really early, and if we camp here, we can be, we can hit the trico hatch. And so we did. So, I mean, we're a little extreme, I guess. I know that sounds a little fanatical, but gosh, it's a happy trade-off. It's an easy trade-off for us. Yes, let's fish some more. Yes. We're insatiable, I think.
Very, very neat. And do you have any kind of, secrets or suggestions for how to introduce kids to fly fishing and keep them interested?
Oh, man. My kids kind of came by it naturally, and I know that's not true for everybody, but one of the biggest things I would say, just make it easy and keep it fun. When my kids were younger and we taught them how to bass fish, they catch a fish or two, but then, they're distracted. Well, I hear this frog croaking. Where is this frog at? They want to put the rod down and go figure out where that frog is, or, what, I saw a lizard run by, or let's throw some rocks now, I know that's kind of a taboo thing when you're fishing. You don't want to throw rocks in the water. And I know a lot of other parents might say that's a bad thing, a taboo thing, but just if you can get them having fun, they're going to want to come back, as opposed to sitting in a boat for 8 hours just waiting for your bobber to go down in the sun. They might not have such a positive experience, doing that. So we just always made it adventure. That's what we call it. We didn't even call it fishing. We said, we want to go have an adventure. And it was just kind of following their lead and letting them be kids and loving what they love. They loved bugs. So a lot of times something would whiz by and butterfly, we're chasing a butterfly now, and it was fun. And that's what drew them to the outdoors and led them back to fishing. It just naturally. Another thing, I've got a redhead. We definitely never, ever leave home without plenty of food. Otherwise you have some hangry moments. So avoid those at all costs. Make sure there's plenty of food. And just maybe taking that a step further, just managing comfort. Are they too hot? Are they too cold? If Wes gets cold, heaven help us all. So we always mitigate all of those little hurdles. And just make it fun. That's all that you can do. If it's fun, they're going to want to do it all the time. And it's just an easy transition when you say, let's go have fun.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to have fun?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, we always talk about the benefits of being outdoors. And, you and I had a conversation, I think it was at Scott Stisser's after the Denver fly fishing show one day. Can you kind of share with us kind of how fly fishing has impacted your family and, the impact it's had on raising two young boys in such a tech-centric world?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The outdoors and fly fishing, I mean, if you haven't figured that out yet, it is something so near and dear to my heart. And I do remember that conversation with you. I've always had a love for the outdoors. And, I worked for the Forest Service for a lot of years, and through college, but nothing really impacted my life as deeply and more meaningful than fly fishing did. And I think that it's because I discovered it at such a vulnerable time in my life. And we kind of touched on that. We just lost our home. We're squished in this RV. You put that pandemic cherry on top, and our life was kind of in shambles a little bit. Things were pretty unrecognizable. And so we learned, pretty quickly also that our small business was a very non-essential business for 2020 and 2021. So we had a lot of time on our hands, but it was a major cause for some anxiety, So I guess you can say that the rivers of Colorado, I mean, this sounds so silly, but they healed me in a way. They carried away a lot of that anxiety, and they kind of put me back together, I guess you could say. It just reminded me that I still had a pulse. There was beauty out there, and I could be moved and in awe of the world around me, the stillness of nature and just the flowing of the river. It just left such an impression on me. It taught us how to live. It really did. It taught us what was important. And my kids were in absolute heaven. I mean, they were living their best life. They still are. Their bedroom was like camping full time, and now they're just taking it into the woods with them. I mean, life couldn't get any better for them. But fly fishing steadied me, I think, during that hard time in my life. And I won't speak for Chris, but I think it was similar for him too. And all of a sudden, the four of us had something in common. And what more can you ask for as a family? We were bonded by this shared love and passion. The feelings that we get as we hiked and fished and filled our boxes together. I mean, we camped under the stars. We talked about God. We cheered for each other with each catch. I mean, we just felt the joy of being alive and doing that together. It's just, it really is so special to me. And like I said, I know it sounds a little cliche and maybe a little bit cheesy, but it was our thing. It was our outlet. And I just feel so fortunate that we were able to discover that together. So couple that with, I'd say the opposite of that, then you kind of enter in, technology. The kind of oxymorons in that regard. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not an anti-technology family by any means. I mean, we have devices, we have phones, we have social media accounts. But I do believe in today's world, it's kind of easy, if I can say it, easy for parents to allow their devices to maybe raise them a little bit. It's easy for them to kind of hand over an iPad or a device just to get some peace and quiet. And then before you know it, the day's gone. So the tech obsession of today's youth it's frightening to me. It very quietly takes over. And so the experiences that my boys have had in nature have been so rewarding that, hours on YouTube or with a video game just really don't compare. They're not left wanting more when they compare the two. It's like, I know they know what they want. They know what they like. They dream about tarpon and redfish and brown trout. They don't dream about, they're not jonesing for a fix on scrolling through Instagram, and so I think as a parent, I love that aspect, where nature has sort of replaced that, that strong need for connection, found on social media. It's a connection with something else. And so I love that. Like I said, don't misunderstand me. We jump on YouTube, we jump on social media, we just tend to focus and gravitate more towards, maybe Slide In's channel or Charlie Craven's channel, as opposed to, or a podcast, as opposed to, maybe an influencer, all these little other crazy accounts that are out there. So,
yeah. Well, but it's funny, right? Because I always say, it's kind of like a shovel. I can dig a hole or I can hit you in the head, right? So, like I love tech too, but, I do think that, using it as a tool, kind of like you're describing, to learn how to do things and to use it to like truly connect with people and to really kind of, you find your people, but then you also get to spend time with them in person or if they're in another country. And I think that's a very different, interaction than just abdicating your agency and just kind of taking whatever pops up on the screen. Right.
Sure. And like I said, more to both of our points, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because my kids don't spend all kinds of time on game systems and don't hang out, on these social media accounts, they're kind of outcasts, at school. And so they don't have any friends. They've been bullied to the point where we've had to involve the police on certain occasions. But then insert fly fishing again, and all of a sudden you've got these people that they've made friends with that hear about stuff like that, and they just embrace them and they reach out to them. Umpqua Feather Merchants, the gang over there sent a little care package to my kids, and it just happened to be at a really pivotal point. And I think my kids smiled for weeks. It's like they may be isolated at school, but they know where they belong. They have this community of friends and people, and they're not all their same age, but that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant at that point. So you get random boxes in the mail. Hey, I thought of the kids. Here's some tying materials, or, I really wanted to reach out and help the kids, and here's this or here's that. And I know that can sound like, oh man, geez, Kisha, I wish I had friends like that. But that's not it at all. It's teaching my boys, I want to be a friend like that. It's teaching them so many powerful lessons that you can't get any other way. I'm so proud of them for sticking up for what they believe in and who they are, because it's teaching them balance. Tech is great. You can learn a lot, but like you just said, you can also dig yourself a pretty deep pit to live in, and you can choose how to act and how to respond. And they've got these great mentors in their life that are paving that way for them. And I'm so beyond grateful and blessed for the experiences that we've had just from fishing. I know it's more than that. It's more than fishing. It's just been a wonderful journey so far.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much there, right? I mean, there's living, deliberately, there's the power of authenticity and vulnerability and the power of trust, right? And,
yes.
And those are all those things that, I think are harder and harder to come by today. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? I just think about growing up in the 70s and there was a lot more of that, right?
Yeah.
And, also in the sense of it's kind of this irony where, we're more connected through technology than we've ever been, but so many people are so incredibly lonely because they haven't found their people.
Yes. Oh, I 100% agree with that. And it's so sad. It breaks my heart. And, that's what, life can give you those tools, and experience can give you those tools to try to, get you to your people, drive you to your passion. I, everybody needs a passion. Everybody needs their people. Everybody needs a village. Everybody does. And they deserve that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And, and it builds resiliency, which is a great thing for kids, right? When they have that courage and that
sure.
resiliency, right? And then they can just kind of, point themselves in the right direction and, they learn, right, to find their people and they have the courage to kind of grit it out. And those are super powerful
Yep.
life lessons, right?
Yeah, that you don't learn from a video game, unless I'm mistaken. I mean, I haven't found a video game that's taught me that lesson, but I've seen firsthand, comparing the two, and and absolutely those lessons, they're hard learned, but they mean so much. They're invaluable. And learning the tools to navigate your way through those lonely moments, it's everything. That's life. That's life. And turning to the river and turning to fly fishing, I mean, I think that's just such a healthy outlet for them, for all of us.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I always kind of, so my boys are, my oldest just turned 21 this week, and then my youngest is 15. But, you kind of talk about it in that whole process of you're trying to raise an adult, right? And
That's scary.
yeah, well, it's that's all the stuff that goes into that, right? It's not, it's not just grades or whatever. It's like it's like there's this whole package of life skills, right? That you're trying to, all this life wisdom you're trying to give your children, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's an amazing thing. And, we touched on it earlier. I wanted to kind of get back to the fly tying because I do want to drill into this because I know you've got a lot of good secrets for people. So your boys got a vice from Santa Claus, and then how long did it take you to kind of get the bug?
Oh boy, it didn't take long. Um, they got their vice for Christmas in December, and I had my own. Chris and I both got our own, but I got mine for my birthday in April of that, following Christmas. So, it, I, it was crazy how fast everything happened. Sometimes I forget that it's only been a couple of years because I can't really remember life before I typed flies. But I just think, the artistic appeal was so inviting for me. I love to draw. I love to paint. I love all those things. So expanding my creativity into a new realm was just it was too easy. I mean, and I fell hard. I fell madly in love with time flies. I think I frightened Chris, at some points. I mean, just the rabbit hole. He was like, surely she's got to come up for air somewhere. But I started tying flies. Like I had to make up for the previous 40 years that I had never done it. I mean, I was just so into it. And it was just, it was just so much fun. I enjoy, I tie every single day. Rarely is there a day that I don't tie a fly or a dozen flies. I try to tie a good dozen or so every day. But it's just, I love it. It connects me to the water. I dream about what's going to eat it and where I'm going to be as I'm tying it. I mean, it's so cheesy, but gosh darn, I love it so much. So yeah, that transition did not take long. And I definitely have my kids to thank for that. They're pretty cool kids. Gosh, I'm a lucky mom. So they spearheaded that whole tying gig, and yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So what do you tie on?
My first vice was a Regal. I bought a Regal, and I love it. I still use it. I eventually wanted to try, a full rotary vice, and I went to a Renzetti, and I love that vice. I absolutely love it. So I tie on the Renzetti most of the time, but I still use the Regal a lot for if I'm going to do some deer hair work, tie a bass bug popper, somewhere where I'm really tugging and pulling hard on that, on the thread and on the hook, hold bigger hook better. Sometimes I'm using, 1/0, 2/0 hooks. It's just, there's a right tool for the job, no matter what you're doing. And so sometimes the Renzetti's perfect and sometimes the Regal's perfect. So I keep them both within arm's reach at all times.
Got it. And which Renzetti do you have?
I have the master. I just went. I mean, I'm all in, Marvin. We are all in or all out kind of people. So yeah, we are. I got the master, and yeah, we all have Renzettis and we all have Regals. It's kind of a crazy thing, but Yeah, Chris got a master as well. A good friend of ours, a dear friend. I didn't know at the time, but he kind of heard, saw my kids tying and reached out and just said, I've been given a lot of really cool things in my life, and I'd love to help your kids out. Can I send them some vices? And I just about fell out of my chair. Just the nicest man, one of our dear, dear friends to this day. So my kids have Renzettis as well that they were gifted by someone pretty near and dear. So we're kind of a Renzetti family.
Yeah. And so I want to talk to you too about tires that you kind of follow, on social media or who have influenced you. And I mean, we already know you've got Rat Stink and Skeeter on the list, but, who are some of the folks that you kind of watch tie and that you kind of follow and that have mentored you on your journey?
Without sounding redundant, I mean, Charlie Craven, hands down. I mean, he has a gift for teaching. I don't even know how many times I've gone through and watched his videos. I always pick up something different. Like I said, he has a way of teaching. And the thing that I love and appreciate so much about Charlie is that he's not afraid to tell me when something needs some work. We learn a lot from success, but gosh, not in anything in comparison to when we maybe make mistakes or have a little bit of a failure. And that can happen on the vise. It's like, he's just not afraid to say, you need to work on your proportions, or that tail's too long, or don't let your resin come up on the bead like that, or, and it just, I always tell him, like, I'm not looking for praise. I just want to know how to get better. And he's so good at that. He can do it in such a good and classy way that really helps me. And he pushes me, he really does push me to try new things and to be better. And, I am so grateful for that guy. He's just awesome. So Charlie, hands down. Kelly Gallup, of course. I mean, how can you not talk about Kelly? I went through a streamer phase. I go through a streamer phase several times a year. It just, I have kind of like fly tying ADD. But I really appreciate Kelly when he says, if it isn't right, if it doesn't look right, then back it off and start again. Take it off and do it again. Don't move forward until you get things how you want it. And that always resonated with me from the first time I heard him say it. And that echoes in my mind a lot as I'm tying. Do it right. Does it look right? Stop and look. Flip your vise around, look at it, get it right. Then you learn those proportions from the get-go. There's so many great tires out there. It all just depends on what you're looking for. Chris Johnson at Living Waters is such an awesome tire, and he's taught me so much. They do a tying class, a beginner and an intermediate class every Wednesday night at the Fly Shop. And I have learned so much from him and from the group down there. I always look forward to Uncle Feather Merchants. Their tying seasons, they oftentimes pull their signature tires together and do a live stream session during tying season. And they're always relevant flies, always new patterns. And that I learn a lot from that. We center whatever evening they end up doing those broadcasts. I mean, it's on our calendar. The kids know. It's like, don't interrupt. We got to make sure we have dinner done early. We're watching and we're learning. Schultz Outfitters. I mean, they've got such a great program up there too for a lot of their bass stuff. Then you throw Russ Madden in there. Eli Gonzalez on Instagram. It's Easy Fly Gonzalez, or don't quote me on that, but it's Easy Gonzalez. He's such a clean and talented tyer. Blaine is. We do so much bass fishing down here. He's impacted the fly industry with his designs. Absolutely. So I'm so inspired by him. Phil Rowley, I'm really starting to dive into stillwater patterns. He's been such a huge help. I've learned so much from him. I don't know. There's so many people. It just kind of depends on where you're at in your journey, what you're wanting to learn and what catches your eye. Eli, like I mentioned, he could tie some of the most realistic and incredible bugs that look just like the real thing. So if that's your gig, he's your guy. And there's times where I want to learn that. Russ Madden, he's like, this is your weapon. We've got to make these things lethal, and he does. So that really inspires me. Andreas Anderson makes deer hair work look like a walk in the park. I still scratch my head. I try to figure out how he does what he does with deer hair. But I love watching his videos. I've even taken some of his classes. I love learning from people who are willing to teach. And that's all that it is. I just glean as much as I can and pull information and tips and hacks anywhere anywhere they're available. So I'll take all the help I can get from anyone who's willing to give it. But there's so many good tyers out there. There really are. We are blessed to have all this information just right here at our fingertips. So, but definitely, I'm sure there's a million other people that I'm forgetting, but those I'd say are the biggest ones so far, I think, on my journey.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because we were talking again in our kind of our game plan call. And I was like, you're like, well, I got, accomplished at tying because I tie a lot. And I think you're kind of being a little too modest, right? Because I know a lot of people that tie a lot that aren't very accomplished. and so, it's just like people that tell you how much they fish and they're not that much better than they were 5 or 10 years ago. And I'm not saying I'm special on the vise or on the water. It's just kind of one of those things. And so I kind of wanted to push you a little bit on that about, because what we're really talking about, and it reminded me of interviewing Kat Toy because Kat made a super rapid, fishing and tying skill progression. And I just wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit more about how you improved your skills in what's basically been, 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2.5 years. I was invited to tie at the Denver Fly Fishing Show after having just 2 years of experience. I don't know enough to say that's pretty unprecedented, but it's pretty. I mean, I was blown away that they said yes. So yeah, I've only been tying a short time, but like I can't really give all the credit to myself. I mean, I definitely put in the time at the vise, but there's so much information out there that's available to anybody. You hear people say, "Oh, I really wish I could learn how to tie." Well, you can. You absolutely can. But I would say, someone who wants to up their game a little bit, just ask a lot of questions. How does this work? Does that look right? What material does this do? What is this for? I kind of mentioned I wanted to learn stillwater flies, and so I reach out, to Phil Rowley and Brian Chin, and they take the time to explain it to me. But then, then it's on me to take what they've explained and to go to the vise and to put in the time and practice it and just be driven to get it right. You kind of have to have that passion at the heart of it that says, I want to nail this. I want to learn how to tie the no hackle. I mean, that I've made progress on it, but I'm not there, but I'm so committed to learning it. And so that commitment, is available if you just put in the time. I always have my nose in a book. I mean, I really do. I have read so many fly tying books. I have listened to so many podcasts. I mean, anytime we're woodworkers, so anytime I'm running a sander, I've got some expert on some technique, talking in my ears, that I'm visualizing as I'm sanding. I mean, I was obsessed with wet flies not too long ago. The Guadalupe River, kind of what you were describing, on the Yellowstone. There's just, you're waiting for those bugs to come off and you swing those wet flies through the quad and you're getting a bite. So I was like, oh my gosh, I got to learn more about wet flies. So, I'm waiting at a tire at discount and I've got my nose in Dave Hughes wet fly books. And then I'm over in the pickup line for the kids at school and I've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to pull that Dave Hughes book back out and I'm going to pick up where I left off. I mean, I just love to learn, and there's so much out there to learn from. You've got April Volke's podcasts and like we mentioned, Pat Dorsey's books. I mean, there's so much to learn that if you're willing to fully immerse yourself and try to be a sponge and learn from everybody in a humble way, you're going to get better. I mean, if you put the time in, you're going to get better, but you have to be willing to make changes where they're needed. You have to accept the teaching and accept the help and the tips and the corrections humbly with an open mind and make those changes. If you make the changes, you're going to see results. And that's, like I said, I don't think that's anything special that I'm doing. I just think I love it so darn much that I can't stay away from it. I love it.
Yeah. Although I would say, being receptive to constructive criticism is actually, in my experience, pretty rare. Right.
I can see how that's true. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
I would say 8 out of 10 times, if someone asks me what I think, they don't want me to really tell them. They want me to tell them that they're awesome.
Right. Well, I don't know. I'm not that way because I'm pretty hard to offend. I know that, There are some people out there that might consider that a challenge, but I love to learn, and I know. I mean, I guess that's the only way it can come. I mean, you have to be willing to admit that you're wrong sometimes. You have to be willing to admit that maybe that can be better. I remember one time Charlie Craven told me, he says, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed." Because I told him that this fly, was just a little too small. And so I made an adjustment and substitute here. And that was his reply. And I laughed. I thought, you know what? He's right. Gosh darn it. He's so right. And by golly, that next night, I made the change, and I was like, "Charlie, here it is. I did it." And he's like, "Now I'm really proud of you." Like, you have to be willing to be wrong, and you have to be willing to make mistakes. You just have to. It's going to happen. You're going to be like, "Dang it, start over." Let's cut this off. Kelly Gallup in his time classes, he goes around with a razor blade. I learned that from him this summer. We met him. And he says in his time classes, he walks around with a razor blade and he'll look at somebody and go, is it on there right? Does it look right? No? Okay. And he cuts it off. You have to be willing to start over. I bet a lot of people would probably not love that very much, but it's how you learn. That's how we all learn. We learn from making mistakes. So I've obviously made a lot of them, and I'm going to make more. And I tell that to my kids. You've got to be willing to just make a mistake and go, okay, what next? What am I going to do differently?
Yeah. Learn to fail quickly, as they like to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. So I still want to get you a couple tying tips that you can share with mere mortals to help us up our tying game. A couple things.
Okay. I would say, we've already talked about don't being afraid to make mistakes. We're not going to beat that horse anymore, but don't be afraid to be new, to try something new. I think that, nobody wants to admit they don't know what they're doing, or I've never tried this before, or, you get to the deer hair part of that sex dungeon fly and you're like sweating bullets because you think you suck at deer hair, and it's hard. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to try something that's hard and to keep at it. One thing that really helps me, and I think I kind of touched on this earlier, is you can't just tie one or two of a fly. You don't learn enough. You just, and that's my opinion. This is, fly tying according to Kisha Atkin with only, less than 3 years of experience. So take it for what it's worth. But you can't just tie a couple. You have to tie a dozen. Sit down and tie them from start to finish. Give yourself the time to learn and to, because by the time you get through number 6 or 7 or 8, you're like, I've got this. And your last 4 will probably be the best ones that you tie. So tie a lot of them. Learn a nymph and tie a dozen. So if you really want to up your game, grab a tying book, sit down with a YouTube video, follow along, word for word, and tie it. Use the materials that they use, follow the steps that they do. I like to tell my kids, you have to learn the rules to be able to break the rules. So, I like to, there's a reason why that fly designer put that material on that hook. There's a reason why he picked that. There's a reason why he picked that over other things. So try it his way first. Do it how he does it. Learn it. Get good at it. And then before you know it, like we talked about before, you've got these techniques kind of in your toolbox, and you've got these processes down and this understanding of materials down and why they're on a hook. They all serve a purpose. And then you can kind of start getting creative with things and going, I know he did it like this or she did it like this, but I wonder I know that this might work instead, and that might help me in this particular situation on this particular river do this. And your creativity can kind of take over. Then you can start breaking the rules. Then you can start being creative, but you're creative with a purpose. And that's probably the best advice, is just follow the rules in the beginning. Do it and do them a dozen at a time. And then as your tools start building and your knowledge starts building, start being creative with it. Start having fun with it. And your understanding is only going to increase. But you have to be teachable, like we talked about. You have to be a sponge and you have to be humble. But learn the rules, and then you'll soon be able to break them.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I'm a big believer in that tie a dozen rule. And I'm a big believer that you start with a larger version of the pattern and then you start tying multiple dozens, smaller and smaller.
Sure.
And yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I always love to ask people that tie a lot, I bet you've got some crazy wonky tool on your bench that you can't live without that you should tell people about.
I don't know if it's crazy wonky. Um, I wouldn't say I'm a tool freak because I definitely I have my tools that I love and I really stick with those. But I use one of those Petty Jean magic tools. I really love putting, feathers and things in dubbing loops. And gosh, I love that thing. I reach for that thing and that clip all the time. And I don't know that too many people have it. I don't know if you know even what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's clear. It looks like an alligator clip, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you can stick the feather with the stem through the little slat and it will splay upwards the feather fibers on the sides. So then you can pinch them with your clip and cut them off and leave the stem, remaining in that little seated in that little center portion of the clip. And in the little bench tool. And I love that thing. I use that thing all the time. I love it.
Yeah, very neat. And do you have a favorite material you like to tie with?
Oh, I'm kind of a fan of chickaboo. I love it. It's just kind of like a smaller version of marabou. I love the undulation and the motion you get from those feathers. So a lot of my flies, I try to plug that in where I can because I feel like it's such a trigger. I really, really love natural materials in general. So CDC, that's probably another favorite. I really love CDC. So that's a tough question. So I'm proud of myself for narrowing it down to only two.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm going to hit you with another broad question and ask you if you have a kind of a favorite pattern or a favorite style of fly that you like to tie.
Oh, I really don't. And the reason because I think fly tying is kind of a back door to becoming a better angler. I know that some people might disagree with that, and that's totally okay. But I believe that understanding, what a fly was designed to do allows you to understand better how to fish it, when to fish it, why to fish it. And so for that reason, I've never wanted to pigeonhole myself into, it's not that you can't have a favorite, but they're all my favorite because they all catch fish in different scenarios for different reasons at different times. So I love to tie everything. I really do because it helps me catch more fish. I want to be able to show up to a piece of water anywhere, and though it might take some time, I'm gonna figure it out. I know I'm gonna have what's in my box that can work, and I'm gonna figure it out no matter what. So I mean, give me carp flies, you know, bass flies, saltwater flies, nymphs, dries, streamers, any of it. I love them all. I really do. They all serve a purpose just at a different time. So I'd probably say I tie nymphs and emergers the most, if that helps, so I'm not being a total stinker and not answering your question, just, because I fish them the most, it's such a huge food source. But I'm one of those ridiculous people that takes way too many flies to the river, way too many flies. I have them with me. I love them. They all will have a purpose at some point. So
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think in my my tub, I have 7 guide boxes, those big like flat boxes that they're the size of a big book.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
doesn't even include the probably 15 boxes I have. So I
Oh boy.
yeah, I totally get it. And then I would also say too, something you said really resonated because Blaine and I talk about this all the time about you can't be a fly designer if you don't really fish because you don't understand the fishing problems that you're trying to solve.
Right. Thank you. I love that. That's awesome. It's just true. You can try to argue it, but it's just true. And likewise, I hate to say it, but like a lot of people who fish who don't tie flies, I've seen that so often on the river. We've been given so much help, so much knowledge. You see someone struggling on the river, you want to go up and help them. If they're open to that, obviously, like we talked about, some people really don't want help or need help, and that's okay. But if they seem like maybe they'd be open to some help, I love to go up and offer that. And so, they'll say, what are you fishing or what's working? Or I saw you using this, or I saw you catching this, what was that you were using? And so I'll pull out my box and of course I'll give them a few, but I'm like, do you tie flies? And they're like, no, I don't. And it's like, okay, well, you're not going to be able to find this in a fly shop, but here's the next closest thing. but I just feel like you're limiting yourself. You kind of limit yourself in understanding why am I fishing this fly? He pulls, this individual might pull open his box and say, well, I've got some of these. And it's like, I'm sorry, but none of those quite do what this does. So you could try them, but this is going to be your best bet. Here, I'm going to give you a few more. I mean, you kind of limit yourself. You got to be able to, have a failure on the water and go home and sit down at the vise and go, what do I need that's going to do the job for me so I can take it back next week or tomorrow or the next month and catch those fish that I couldn't catch today because I didn't have what I'm going to make right now.
Yeah, at some point, right, if you fish long enough, you're going to find some really snotty fish, right?
You're right. They're out there. Oh boy.
They're out there.
I've met some.
And they live in lots of different places. And so I have to believe that we're going to be able to find the Atkin family on the 2024 show circuit. Or have you guys got plans to hit the Feremsky shows or any other shows this season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. We'll be in Denver, for sure. We'll be tying at the Denver show. We'll be tying at the Salbug Roundup. We'll probably be at the Wasatch Intermountain Expo again. We're going to go to Bob and the Hood. We're not as demonstration tires, but just to learn and to take it all in. We usually go to the Streamer Love Fest. I mean, we're all over the map, and I'll be sure to post about it online. So, anybody crazy enough or bored enough that wants to know what we're up to can find us. We sure get out there and we have some fun and we learn a lot. So we'll be out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm actually going to not go to the Atlanta Fly Fishing Show, even though it's in my backyard, and I'll be at Bobbin in the Hood as well.
Oh, awesome. I'm so excited. I remember last year, seeing, the advertisements for it and listening to Schultze talk about it and all the preparations for it. And man, I just had too much FOMO. I was like, I'm not missing it next year. We're going. And all my kids are like, yes, sweet. So yeah. we made sure to make it happen this year. Well, our poor trusty old van will get some more tires and some more mileage this coming year, but we'll be there. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And before I let you go tonight, Kisha, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners?
I don't think so. I think we've kind of talked about a lot. We're on Instagram. I'm Momma Angler, MOMMAANGLER, Momma Angler, 2 M's and 2 A's. My kids have accounts, but they've never on social media to post about it. So we kind of turned that one into a family account. But just get out there and have fun. The outdoors can change your life. It really has changed mine. And I wouldn't regret any 1 minute I've spent outdoors with my family. No matter what you're doing, if you can get outside, those memories last a lifetime, and they really do change lives and have an impact. So I'm a big advocate for family time and time together. I'm a big advocate for finding your own quiet time as well. So take time for yourself, but do things as a family. It will change you. It will change your kids. That's kind of my shameless plug.
Yeah, there you go. And I will drop your Instagram handle in the show notes so people can find you and follow you. And, Kisha, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to chat with me.
Oh, it was a blast. I had a good time. I love talking about fishing anytime. Thanks for having me, Marvin.
You bet. Take care and have a good evening.
You too. Good night.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. Tight lines, everybody.